This is a brief lecture to accompany the readings assigned for week 9. Specifically for this week, you are reading the first 2 chapters in the data visualization textbook. The actual textbook title is called Storytelling with Data. And just a few words about this lecture. I'm going to focus on kind of the big picture side of data visualization and data storytelling as it is explained in this textbook. I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of how to complete the different design techniques that are introduced in this textbook. But honestly, one of the reasons I chose this textbook is it really introduces data visualization and data storytelling in a way that does not require great technological sophistication. So I think she says in the introduction to this book that anything that is introduced in this book can be accomplished in basic programs that everyone has access to, like Excel. So anyway, I'll be glad to help you individually if you need help on troubleshooting some things. And she also has some resources on her website that you can consult, and they're referenced in the book. But for the most part, my lecture is going to focus on the big picture kind of decision making that goes into creating an effective data visualization. I think one of the most useful concepts in this book so far is the metaphor that the author introduces on page 20. Effective data visualization is kind of like looking through 100 oysters to find 1 or 2 pearls. As she goes on to say, you don't want to make your audience hear about all the oysters you had to look through. Rather, you want them to see the pearls. So how do we do this? Your first step is to think about context. Context is everything, right? Consider this photo for a minute. What is going on here? What can you tell about the elements of this photograph without knowing its context? And what kinds of questions does the photograph lead you to ask? For me personally, I would like to know why this person is here. What series of events led this person to be situated in this body of water? And what is the body of water? Is it the ocean? Is it a lake? A backyard pond? Is the person enjoying a day at the beach, or are they shipwrecked? Without knowing what's left out of the photograph, we can only guess how to answer these questions. Fortunately, in most professional communication situations, you will know a little bit more about context than what we're able to discern from this particular photograph, and that knowledge is your starting place for developing an effective data visualization. As a first step toward understanding context, the author suggests a distinction between exploratory analysis and explanatory analysis. When you are in the exploratory phase, you are probably faced with a whole heap of data, maybe 100 oysters, and you're looking for the 1 or 2 pearls that will be most compelling to your audience. When you reach the explanatory phase, by contrast, you have found those 1 or 2 pearls, and you're trying to figure out how to tell a story about them that will engage your audience. More specifically, your goal is to have a specific effect on your audience, and you want to weave those pearls into a story that will achieve that effect. As a next step, the author encourages you to ask these basic questions: who, what, and how. This slide provides a summary of the specifics you want to discover in response to each of these questions. Now for a few examples. I took these, by the way, from a website called Data is Beautiful, 10 of the best data visualization examples from history to today. You can Google it if you want to see the whole website. I'd like to highlight just a couple of examples. What I like about these is they are not necessarily sophisticated in a technological sense. In fact, some are very old, but they are notable for the effect they achieved in regard to their respective audiences. For example, this 1854 map was important because its graphic representation of cholera deaths in a London neighborhood eventually led to the discovery that cholera deaths were happening among people who got their water from a particular well. This next one is number 5 on the list. It's a more recent example, but again, it's notable for its simplicity and impact on its audience. The federal budget is, of course, notorious for its complexity. This was apparently one of the first efforts to provide citizens with a visual explanation that could be easily understood. It was also interactive, so users could click on different areas and find more information. And to see that, we have to actually go to the website here. But see, if you click on these different areas, it breaks it down and provides more granular data. And then you can even click again and find even more details. So I think that's kind of cool. And this one is number 7 on the list. Again, it's a simple visual included in the Next US project by the Pew Foundation. You can Google that and see the whole project if you like, but the website includes a lot of great visuals. This one is interesting because of the animation and the elegant visual narrative it provides of baby boomers' anticipated progression as a segment of the US population from 1950 through 2060. I think this one, especially with the animated aspect, really is a great example of what we call data storytelling, right? Because the picture itself tells a story that's pretty easy to comprehend. And finally, I want to end today's lecture by pointing to some industry research that emphasizes the professional value of obtaining skills in data visualization. This is a link to one report that shows the great demand for skills in data science and analytics. What I love is that this report emphasizes the need for people who can work across disciplinary boundaries and the ways in which this kind of cross-disciplinary mindset enables individuals to rise to leadership positions. I'll go ahead and put a copy of this report in Blackboard so you can review it in more detail if you wish, but ironically the report itself contains some great examples of data visualizations like this one that I'm showing here. So that is it for this week's lecture. Again, I decided to stick with a brief overview and not get into the nuts and bolts of how you create these things technologically, but rather emphasize kind of the mindset that you want to get into as you start thinking about what kinds of data visualizations are going to be most effective in your reports. And along those lines, your discussion forum for this week is really kind of like part 2 of last week, because I'm asking you to trade drafts and offer feedback to a classmate on their report draft so far. And you'll see there's going to be more information in the learning module in Blackboard, but one of the things I'm going to ask you to consider as you read your classmate's report is kind of these questions about context and storytelling and the who, what, and why, and maybe offer your classmates some insights that they can use as they start thinking of what kinds of data storytelling they want to accomplish in their report. So that's it for now. Hope you have a great week.